Snow drifted along the edges of the old church, muting the sound of hammers and voices as workers pried loose warped boards and blackened beams. Beneath the pulpit, beneath the very spot where hundreds had once knelt to pray, one of them struck stone, then wood, then something hollow. They cleared away dust that smelled of centuries, and there it was, a compartment sealed by hand, wrapped in tar and iron bands. Inside lay a leather-bound book, the pages yellowed but still legible, and row upon row of delicate glass vials filled with traces of powder turned gray with time. The script inside the book belonged to one hand alone. Page after page recorded names, hundreds of them, each accompanied by a date, a cause of death, and most chillingly, a calculation of value. These were not parish records, but an inventory of souls. In the margins were fragments of prayers and fragments of business. Divine communion achieved, estate executed within days. Between 1647 and 1685, more than 300 wills had passed through three men bearing the same name, Pemberton. They had been physicians, ministers, and magistrates in the small colonial settlement of Newfield, Connecticut. Together they had administered medicine and sacraments to the dying, and somehow each death had enriched their household. The authorities who found the ledger centuries later sealed it away. They said its revelations might shake public faith in the colonial founders. But the truth refused to stay buried. In life, the three brothers, Obadiah, Jeremiah, and Cornelius, had arrived in Newfield during the terrible winter of 1647, when famine and fever gnawed at the settlement. They came bearing letters of recommendation, written in an elegant Boston hand, and carried themselves like men accustomed to command. The eldest, Obadiah, wore the black coat of a physician and spoke of modern cures learned in London. Jeremiah, tall and spectral, was a preacher whose voice could hold a room for hours. Cornelius, the youngest, handled legal matters and wrote with the precision of a clerk trained to weigh every word. Within weeks, they had become indispensable. Doctor, pastor, magistrate, body, soul, and law, bound to one family. None had wives or children, yet the Puritan settlers took that as further evidence of piety. Together they tended the sick, comforted the dying, and bore witness when trembling hands signed their last testaments. The first victim was a widow named Sarah Holcomb. Consumption had wasted her lungs. Faith and opium did the rest. The brothers visited her daily, administering what they called an elixir of divine sight. After each dose, her voice wandered into visions. Fields of light, angels, her dead husband calling from heaven with instructions about her estate. Jeremiah guided her words as though interpreting a prophecy, and Cornelius recorded them faithfully. When she died, the will he produced left everything, house, land, and livestock, to the brothers for the glory of God and the comfort of his servants. The pattern spread like a quiet contagion. Illness, visitation, revelation, inheritance. No one questioned the miracles. Newfield believed it was blessed. The brothers donated bread to the poor, timber to the church, medicine to the afflicted. They built trust as carefully as they built wealth. When doubts arose, Jeremiah smothered them with scripture and tears. To challenge them was to challenge providence itself. 2 decades passed before anyone looked too closely. By then, their estate dominated the edge of the forest. The house expanded with a study for Cornelius, an apothecary for Obadiah, and a private chapel for Jeremiah. They called it a house of preparation, a place where the faithful could face death unafraid. Then came Constance. She arrived one summer in a rickety carriage, a niece from England, 16 years old and suddenly orphaned. Her presence softened the brothers' image, 3 solemn men now blessed with family. She was gentle, eager to help, and too intelligent for their comfort. At first she noticed only odd habits, vials kept locked away, her uncle's insistence that the dying drink from a particular cup, the way he studied her eyes when she spoke. Then she saw what happened at the Thatcher farm. Hidden behind a half-closed door, she watched her uncle pour a dark liquid down a fevered man's throat. Within an hour he was speaking to angels while Cornelius scribbled at his side. She understood then that the visions were manufactured, the faith a weapon. Curiosity became fear. In the cellar, one storm-bound night, she found the truth. Shelves of bottles labeled in cipher, journals cataloging doses and outcomes. and a cabinet of relics, rings, ribbons, locks of hair, each tagged with a name and date. At the back lay a ledger listing the brothers' fortune, and at the bottom of the final page, CP inheritance to be secured upon her 18th year. She copied what evidence she could, hid her notes beneath a floorboard, and planned her escape to Hartford. But the snow held her captive, and the brothers began to watch her more closely. On the eve of her departure, they offered her a tea to help her sleep. She pretended to drink. By dawn, she was gone from the house, seen only once more in the village square, speaking calmly to Jeremiah before he led her away. 3 days later, her body was found among the trees. The doctor said fever. The preacher said melancholy. The town mourned and moved on. It should have ended there. But Rebecca Wilson, a servant cleaning the girl's room, found the hidden journal. Her husband read it, made a copy, and sent it secretly to Hartford. He was dead within a week, raving of visions that the minister interpreted as guilt. Investigators arrived months later, cautious and armed with warrants. They found only ash. The Pemberton house had burned to its foundation the night before their arrival, and the brothers were gone. In the cellar that survived the blaze lay the same vials and ledgers Constance had described. A final entry in Cornelius's hand read, "The girl's journal is found. Wilson has betrayed us. All must be cleansed by fire. No one ever proved their deaths." Years afterward, 3 men calling themselves Preston appeared in Jamestown. A doctor, a minister, a lawyer. Later, 3 Penworth brothers surfaced in Bristol, England, bearing wealth and piety and dying conveniently in yet another fire. The colony passed new laws to prevent deathbed fraud, and Newfield rebuilt around the blackened stones. Centuries later, a historian sifting through archives would find the evidence again and realize what had been hidden. That faith, medicine, and law, joined in one family, had created a machine for murder. The foundation stones still lie in the woods, half swallowed by moss. On quiet nights, locals say, you can smell opium on the wind or hear a young woman's voice whispering from the trees, warning anyone who listens to be careful whom they trust when death is near.